people, I'm going to say welcome to you all. Thank you very much for showing up. I think we're going to have a fascinating talk this afternoon from Alex. And Alex, I will leave the ball entirely in your court. So it's all yours.
Right. Thanks, Graham. I'm going to share my screen. I've got a presentation. Hopefully that is visible.
Yep, no problem.
Right. That's the talk. How do we accelerate the installation of solar PV and battery storage in parishes everywhere? I'm trying to do it everywhere, but parishes are a particular focus. So I'm Alex Templeton. I work for a social enterprise called UK Community Works. We're part of a team led by Essex County Council on a project called ESSNET. We're funded by Innovate UK. I can tell you who they are later if you're interested, and as part of the Net Zero Living Programme. And the objective, we're looking on a project, is how do we speed up the installation of renewable energy in communities? And our goal is to make it as simple as possible for any home or business or farm or community collectively to install solar PV and battery storage. So I suppose the first question is why? Why are we doing this? And three main answers. Energy costs have risen dramatically in the last couple of years. Although they're coming down a bit, the chances are they're going to stay high for quite a long time and maybe even go up again later this year. Cornwall Insight are predicting that they're due to go up rather than down over the course of the year. And this has had a very large impact on household budgets, especially for the poorer 50% of households. Second motivation is addressing climate change. And although we've made progress, the UK is nowhere near on track to hit net zero by 2050. And the third is local economic benefit, and that generating energy locally enables people to retain sort of profits and other sort of values, such as supporting local businesses and job creation in the local community. So in theory, growing awareness of climate change and its risks and the rising cost of energy means that we should all be installing solar PV because on balance, it's cheaper, it's cleaner, and so on. But in practice, adoption is really slow. We've got 30 million homes in the country and just 1.25 million have installed solar PV to date. So what is stopping us? I mean, the first one is cash flow and liquid capital. Bottom 50% of households have got just £2,060 of average cash that they can get their hands on. The bottom 80% have just got 12,500. That's from Office of National Statistics data. I must admit we were fairly startled by those numbers. And no one's going to spend all of their savings on one thing. They tend to keep their money for other things. Basically, very few people can afford to decarbonize if they have to invest upfront to buy something. It's just not going to happen. Secondly, slow rates of return. If you don't have a lot of liquid capital, you're looking for a reasonably fast rate of return on your investment. And solar and battery storage probably take at least 7 years to pay for itself, and probably a bit longer depending on how you sort of use energy. There's also a lack of information of what is possible. There's some distrust of the suppliers. There was the rent-a-roof scandal a few years back that has stuck quite strongly in people's minds, and a general sense of not knowing where to start. So we've got some clear problems: energy costs and carbon emission. We've got an obvious solution, which is solar PV and battery storage. And we've got some barriers preventing widespread adoption, of which knowing what to do, lack of finance and cash flow are probably the most important barriers. So our team took a look at sort of, if we could do things differently, what would that look like? Sort of, what if we could go online and find out what I could generate on my home, my business, my farm, just by clicking on my house on a map? Sort of, what if I could upload some billing data and find out how much I could save and work out roughly what it would cost? And if I can't afford it, I'd have an easy option to have the PV and battery installed at no upfront cost, and then pay for the electricity on a pay-as-you-go basis. And what if a parish council or a community group or the district council were interested? What if there are a set of tools that would enable them to easily use information to sort of coordinate place-based projects at the community level? So working on through those problems and through the potential solutions, we've come up with a community energy service company concept and model. This model gives homes and businesses and communities information on what they are interested in can generate. We then build a list, use this data in various different ways. Typically, in our pilots, we're collaborating with parish councils and community groups. We're doing leaflets, flyers, emails, webinars, village hall events. So we collaborate with the community and we build a list of those interested with host communities. We then go to funders and use the list to raise finance, at which point we conduct detailed feasibility studies. We procure, install and commission the solar PV and battery storage systems. And we oversee the installation. Once this is installed, a household or a business or a farm has three options. The first is that you can just, once it's installed, you can buy the PV array outright. The second is you can enter into a pay-as-you-go arrangement with this not-for-profit community energy service company. And for those households that cannot be installed because the property is shaded by trees, it's in a conservation area, it's a listed building, it's got a landlord that doesn't approve, we can have them enter into an arrangement where the energy that is spilled into the grid, the excess energy, they buy that energy. So they're buying locally produced renewable energy at a discount from what they would buy from their normal supplier. The benefits of this model. So for households and organizations that buy the array outright, we'll have done due diligence on suppliers, we'll have a panel of accredited installers, specifiers that have already jumped through these hoops will be doing the work. We'll be getting a discount because of through bulk purchasing, because we're installing hundreds of projects in one phase. There will be, there'll be significant discounts on some of the key components of the batteries and the solar panels. And they can, even if you bought the array outright, you can still participate in our wider smart local energy system network to provide grid services and sell to neighbours. Benefits for households and organisations that enter the pay-as-you-go agreements. Basically, they can install solar PV at no upfront cost, which gives them an opportunity to reduce their electricity bills and sort of decarbonize their electricity use. And it doesn't matter that they've got no money, that they can just go ahead with that. And for those that cannot generate energy produced locally, generate energy themselves for whatever reason, they've got the opportunity to buy their neighbours' energy and other energy generated by other households and businesses in our network. Right, progress so far. So we've secured Innovate UK funding and money from Ofgem to development key elements of this model. We've done geospatial surveys of the whole of Essex and a number of parishes in Suffolk and Kent and West Sussex. We're working with 2 pilot clusters of parishes in Essex, that's in the Colne Valley and in the Manningtree area. It's a total of 12 parishes. And we're sort of co-designing the services and the contracts and all the rest of it with members of these community. And we're getting excellent feedback and adapting what the offering is as a result of that feedback. We've developed a contract set that we've used with pilot homes. We've installed solar panels and batteries in several pilot homes. And we've got expressions of interest from several hundred homes in our pilot areas. And what are we doing next? we're about to conclude funding for a 500 home pilot. We will finalize the contracts based on the feedback from the people who are using the contract so far. Finish developing the smart local energy system elements of the offer, which allows trading between households. We're going to be working with Tristram on to enable all of this data and information that we're working on to be viewed through the parish online portal, and hopefully whether that will go on a parish website or some other method of making that information available to businesses and tenants in a parish area. We're still to figure out the details, but the intention is to make all of this data freely available. And we're also going to be working with Parish Online to develop a how-to guide for parish councils and do this with parish councils. So it's as simple as possible, it makes sense, and can be easily implemented. That's an awful lot of words. I'll give you a few pictures to go with it. So this is the village of Framsden in Suffolk. We've just done a town hall event with them over there. It's fairly small. It's about 140 homes and a few businesses. The greenhouses, the green buildings are ones that can have solar PV on them. The red ones are the ones that probably can't for various different reasons. That's a sort of close-up. The data is not 100% accurate, but it's getting better, and it's pretty close. And if you click on one of these houses or one of these green shapes, you would get an awful lot of information. And to be honest, too much information. We need to simplify it so the owner of a house or a business or a farm only gets the information that they need, rather than an awful lot of other information that they probably don't need to know about. We can also do the same with land parcels and with small scale wind. So the same principles apply. That you click on a field, work out what it might generate, where the local supply transformers are to connect to, the capacity in those transformers, and so on. If you decide to express an interest in a house, keep it simple, a house, and we do a more detailed survey, that would involve a surveyor coming to visit the house and some initial modelling that would help you decide whether to take this forward. So we model the roof, we model whether there's any overshading by trees. This is the house of a chair of a parish council in West Sussex. We work out where there's most sunlight on the house, and so on. All of this is pretty standard stuff if you're getting solar PV installed, but we're able to not exactly automate it, but to do this much more cheaply possibly than it has been done before, to give people information on whether to take a decision. And if you upload your billing data, we can produce a fairly detailed sort of number on the payback time. Again, all of this is pretty standard these days, but I think we're going to be making it more widely available. We hope to be making it more widely available. So that's it. That's a summary of what we're doing and where we're at. Thank you very much for listening.
That was a most awesome 15 minutes, Alex. Thank you. I mean, you raised the question in the early slides of what if you could come up with all these answers to all these questions, and it strikes me you've done a fantastic job. So I find this very motivating, very reassuring, and congratulations. I'm sure that we're going to have a whole bunch of questions. If people would like to use their hand symbols to raise hands, and first off the block is Tristram.
Yeah, Alex, thanks. Thanks very much. That was very good. The biggest question we've done in Winchfield Parish Council, Alex has made a presentation to our council to get some reaction. And I think the biggest bit of feedback we've got is if people can't afford to install their own PV and they join the scheme and have panels on their roof, what happens if they want to sell the house? Who owns those panels, and what barriers does that put in the way of a sale?
Good question, which I didn't cover because I didn't know what level of detail to go into. If There will be options to buy the panels every few months as a matter of course for their residual value. And if you need it to do that in a hurry, we'll just fix it out. I mean, there's several ways of doing it. If you sell the house, it will become part of the sales transaction, where some of the proceeds are used to pay off the residual value of the panels. So the new owner, it just comes as a package with the house.
Thanks.
Oh yeah, all yours, Bonnie.
Hi there. Alex, thank you. Excellent presentation. I wonder if there's a sort of lower threshold for communities that are trying to put a scheme like this into place, whereby the sell to your neighbours option needs a certain kind of critical mass, as it were, of people engaged in the system before they can sell to neighbours.
No, because this will be happening at a lot of parishes all at the same time. So say in Framsden, which has got 140 houses, we've got 30 expressions of interest. It doesn't matter because the next parish along and the next parish along, and the area of the boundary area is the distribution network operator area. So which there's 10 or so in the UK, maybe fewer than that. But so it's a very large area. So the energy will be traded over a very large area. So the number in any given location doesn't matter.
So is the energy actually kept separate from the grid energy, as it were, or
No.
is it's all just put back in centrally? So one of the things,
sorry, go on.
Just to kind of give that a bit of context to that, one of the things I'm thinking about is that in our local area, like there's a sense that it would be nice if energy generated locally could be used locally. There would be a feeling that it would be nice if we were, as a little area, independent of the grid. But I don't think that's how it can work, is it?
It could, and we have had discussions with UK power networks about piloting microgrids in several very grid constrained parishes. But it will probably make energy more expensive for everyone because there's additional cost involved in creating microgrid. The energy is typically spilled into the grid. It's the accounting method that is the latest regulation is allowing. So it leaves your house, it goes to somebody else's house, that can be kept track of.
Right. So essentially people still will need to have an energy supplier, even if they do this.
Yes, typically say they go onto a pay-as-you-go offering, they would then get 2 bills a month rather than one from their normal provider and a second from the community energy services company. But we know from the pilots is overall that takes the bills down. One important thing I didn't say was if the pay-as-you-go pilots we're working on, the pilot homes are paying between 25 and 30 pence a kilowatt hour from their provider, and they're paying 16 pence per kilowatt hour for the energy that is being sold to them from us. So there is a discount at this point. If energy prices collapse really far, then maybe not.
Lovely, thank you.
Wendy, would you like to go next, please?
Hi, yeah, I mean, my just to tag on from Bonnie's question, I was just thinking then, so standing charges would still obviously be a cost from the main provider, but my question was, so what's the sort of timescale for, say, as in Gloucestershire, being able to be part of this scheme?
We need to finalize the contract and the funding method. We are hoping to be ready to pilot this with more parishes in the last quarter of this year, but realistically, in a worst case scenario, Q1, Q2 next year. We also don't know what a new government will do with around regulation.
Can I just ask as well, just to say, so in terms of, you've obviously done on the benefit side in comparison to how does it support reaching net zero? So if we could get as many parishes as possible involved in having solar energy, how does that impact on getting to net zero?
So I think the electricity coming from the grid at the moment is about 190, 200 grams of carbon per kilowatt hour. And this is, if you're accounting for it in the same way, 0 grams. So, I mean, the British grid has been decarbonised extremely fast and rapidly, but there are still, and it's probably that last 200 grams are going to be the hardest. And this contributes towards that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, oh dear, who's got the echo on? Just looking to see who's got, well, they've just killed it. Okay. My question, Alex, was, I think partially answered by your point about at any time in the pay-as-you-go system, you can turn around and buy the cells. But if you're on a pay-as-you-go system, presumably after 7 years, you would have overcome the installation costs. So what happens then?
No, because the way the funding will be structured, very long-term patient capital, it's designed, the assumption or the working assumption, and this might change, is the goal is to give anyone the opportunity to decarbonize their electricity and save money. So if you were paying for it over 7 years, the price would be higher. So because a lot of the people who cannot afford it are in fuel poverty, so they couldn't afford to pay more to pay it off faster.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So I will lower my hand and move on to David, please.
Alex, again, thank you very much for a really succinct and very actually encouraging presentation. My question is more about scale. Now, one of the most expensive parts of putting in a solar PV with battery is actually the battery systems. Has any thought been given to community level battery storage, a bit like Elon Musk is doing in Texas, but with giga storage systems to provide an entire sort of state buffer capability to capture and then distribute electricity at night? Is there any efficiencies in terms of doing that at a community level?
Lots of efficiencies, and a lot of thought has been given to this, but part of our remit is to design something that works now to overcome as many barriers as possible, as fast as possible.
Roger.
And community scale batteries, they're more risky in terms of financing. B, they need sites, planning permission, and as such will generate opposition and so on, and slow things down. So, and they also, if you're thinking about creating a microgrid, then a community scale battery would make an awful lot of sense. But are we thinking about it? Yes. Have we seen an opportunity to do one as a pilot? Not yet. I know other people have done this elsewhere, although where is not coming into the front of my mind.
Okay, thank you.
And I have a request to Gordon, if you just hang on a second, because Mike Hay put a question in the chat some time ago, which I thought would be very interesting for Alex to see if he's got a political crystal ball. But Mike's question, Alex, is, are there any thoughts on how your plan would be affected by the potential Labour Party UK energy company?
Well, hopefully they would be able to provide some low-cost patient finance. Part of our problem that we're trying to address is over the whole of the country, if you want to connect a new larger scale project, for example, UK Power Networks are saying maximum 200 kilowatt, which will do 50 houses. Go up to Scotland, for example, it's 50 kilowatts. Large scale solar, unless it's already got a license to connect, is going to be really challenging. this is designed to get round by bundling a battery and the PV at the household level. That will get over those grid constraints.
Right.
For example, we've got a number of community projects in Essex and Suffolk that we've been told 11 years to connect. And that whatever GB Energy do, unless they can make the DNOs and the national grid improve the network faster, which they might be able to do, although all the engineers I know are going, how are they going to do that? There aren't even enough engineers to do what we're trying to do at the moment. You know, don't know is the short answer.
Okay, thank you. And then Gordon, thank you very much for holding off, but it's all yours now.
No problem. Thanks for that. Very, very interesting, Alex. So just a bit of context of where I'm coming from. So I'm a director of 4 different community energy projects in the west of England, and I'm vice chair of Herefordshire Green Network. And the core thing that we're working on at the moment is large scale, big solar co-op for larger scale roofs, but to a similar thrust in your direction for the community. Is it on the selling to neighbours question? Is that it seemed to be from what you said that's DNO limited rather than supplier company partnership limited. In my experience with groups like Energy Local and things like that, it's been limited by the supplier company. Could you comment on that?
I probably gave the wrong impression. No, I agree with you. Is that we need so the partner we're working with is a company called Urban Chain, who are fairly cutting edge on the peer-to-peer trading, and we've done work with before.
Okay.
So yes, it's supplier company constrained rather than.
And the other vital question, because I know it drives me mad, is resources. I mean, it's great what you've done, but how many people are involved? Are they volunteers? Are they paid for? How have you got to this point of enabling so far? And how do you see it progressing?
We've been funded by Innovate UK, which is the British innovation agency, and Ofgem, the Office of Gas and Electricity Markets, to design new things that improve the operation of the grid and aid with a socially just transition. That's where the funding has come from. So far, we've had, this project specifically has had about £100,000 and has some more budget left. The Ofgem funded elements, which overlap with this a bit, but technically are another project, it's been about £500,000. The core of the team is UK Power Networks, was led by Essex County Council, UK Power Networks, Power Circle, which are a charity that do a lot of solar. They've got a wholly owned installation subsidiary, Power Circle Projects, and ourselves, a small social enterprise. Core team of about 8 people.
Okay, and how do you see that in 2 years' time or 3 years' time? Do you see these people still maintaining their present resources, or will it need more volunteer, or will it need more paid staff? Because that's been a core issue for us over time.
It's a real issue. I agree. So the Ofgem funded work, there's a £5 million application for additional innovation funding in the works. It's been strongly hinted that Innovate UK will do something similar for us as long as we achieve the milestones that I've kind of laid out with the next steps. We are in detailed discussions with pension funds, ESG funds, and some extremely high net worth individuals about funding a scale up of this. And those parties have funded other bits of our work. So these are discussions with people who know us and have already invested in us. And all of this is kind of, we're not for profit. The whole thing is designed to be not for profit. The umbrella, the goal is to enable a much faster rollout of solar and PV, and make sure that those who typically might not be able to benefit from that can benefit.
That's all great. Thanks very much. And we also have a energy mapping just completed in Herefordshire and Shropshire. So maybe we should share actions in this area.
Very up for it. And I know John and Noel at Big Solar Co-op a bit. So yeah, I'm familiar with their work. It's very good.
Yeah, I'm a director of that. So yeah, good.
Okay.
And moving on to Stuart, please.
Hi, thanks. That's a very interesting and enjoyable presentation. I'm currently trying to get solar PV with batteries on one of our community buildings, but I'd also like to include solar canopies over one of our car parks. I was just wondering whether your system would come out with similar numbers for solar canopies.
Don't know. We haven't looked at solar canopies for about 18 months, but I've thought that solar prices keep coming down, and for us, it will be a financial equation. If it works, it can happen.
But you potentially have the technology to take an aerial photograph of a car park and come up with some figures.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. Jackie, please.
A few years ago, we signed up for Warwickshire Solar Together scheme, and the company that won the tender then couldn't deliver because there was too much demand. How are you going to make sure you've got enough deliverers, people that can actually install the solar?
There aren't enough engineers to install existing demand. So that's an ongoing problem, and it's going to take a while for more people to be trained to be able to do this. I'm assuming if the likely incoming government have done some thinking on skills in this area, because it's a constraint already, and that's before their plans to turbocharge solar installations have begun. It's a known problem.
It's a major issue too for heat pumps, isn't it? That there aren't just the number of heat pump engineers around to install the number of heat pumps we are proposing to put in. So the whole green energy thing is a major manpower headache.
Has been for a long time and will continue to be so.
So just following on your comment about the 2 grams per kilowatt hour for the sort of normal stuff generated on the grid, is that for that's for the network as a whole, Alex? So yeah. It takes sort of account of nuclear power as well as gas power and whatever. We don't have any coal power left, do we?
That's 200 grams per kilowatt hour on average, roughly. That data will be 18 months out of date because it always is. But
I know if you live sort of down in Somerset, then you expect to get all of your power from Hinkley Point, and therefore it's very what's the word, green as it comes.
Yeah, that's an average. The number I quoted was an average number.
And where is the battery pack usually installed in your system?
It can be inside the house or outside the house, not in the roof because they're quite heavy. They're not that big these days. They can go on a wall, in a cupboard, or in a kitchen, or.
And no heating issues, they don't get warm?
Not anymore, no. It's all, this is all, there's millions of them have been deployed now.
And then one more question before we pass it back to Tristan, please. In one of your slides, you were saying that there are issues with grade 2 listed houses. Do you get a sense that the people in the who make the planning applications very tricky for grade 2 houses? Are they sort of under pressure to release or lower their standards, or release the houses that can have solar installations? Because I've seen examples around of very clear grade 1 listed houses that have got solar panels on their roofs. So it just depends where you are.
I think it depends on your local planning department and whether the planners are aligned with the net zero ambitions of the council. But this can go on sheds, on garages, in gardens. You know, it doesn't have to be on a roof. I think planning departments are loosening up quite quickly.
Yeah, I find that the bureaucracies around at the moment don't talk to each other. So you've got one part of the of our council that is saying, yes, we're committed to net zero, and the planning people are saying, absolutely, you cannot put any solar PVs up on your roofs. You're much too precious with your grade 2 listed house.
It's fairly common, but
Yeah.
but bad publicity is changing that. It certainly changed it in Essex, and a few local authorities just suddenly realised that they had two completely different stances in the same organisation.
And good. Well, the revolution starts here. Well done. Tristram.
Yeah, just a comment on planning relaxations. Hart District has just published in their newsletter an item that says they're relaxing all the planning restrictions on listed housing. So it should be much easier. So that's a step in the right direction.
Brilliant, thank you.
But Alex, I wanted to ask you, we had a comment from Jules Thompson. I don't think he's here today, but he's doing a similar thing in Suffolk somewhere in a group of parishes. And his comment was that it's almost essential to have for a community to find a bit of land to put up a sort of local solar farm, because it's so much more efficient than using individual houses. So does your scheme allow for that, and do you encourage your groups of parishes or your groups of your communities to find land to put up a land-based array?
Yes, that was the point of assessing land parcels around communities, which we think that's a really good idea, because some houses are just going to be very difficult to do, and if they had a small stake in a local array, that would make a lot of sense. It's still quite controversial. Like when I did a village hall in Framsden, sort of in April, it's half the parish really wanted 200 kilowatts just up the road, and the other half were saying over our dead bodies, even though they all wanted to green. Everyone in the room wanted to decarbonize, but disputes can be provoked quite easily.
And how much more efficient is it do you have a view? If you could do it with a sort of single land-based array, how much more efficient is that in terms of the price of generation?
So just in terms of solar panels alone, forget the batteries, to put something on a house will cost between £1,000 and £1,500 per kilowatt hour as an average. If you're doing it in a field, it will cost between £700 and £1,000 per kilowatt hour. That's very rough numbers, again 18 months old, but right. So it is substantially cheaper.
Right. Thank you.
And moving on to Kirsten, please.
Hello, thank you. It's all very interesting. I'm curious about your comment regarding the peer-to-peer or the neighbourhood buying of power, in terms of how that works a bit more, because you mentioned it was limited by energy companies. So does that mean everybody in the area has to be with a particular energy company?
Oh.
How do people get notified that that's a possibility for them as well, so that you can get more people joining?
Right. Levels of detail. So the DNO that I mentioned, they're the people who manage the grid, the low voltage grid. Say UK Power Networks will do it across East Anglia and the Southeast. So that's the boundary of the areas that we are balancing energy within. If you are just buying energy, you will need to sign up to Urban Chain or a similar company, supply company to work with. If you are just selling your excess energy, doesn't matter. You can be with a normal provider. And if you're on a pay-as-you-go, you also have a separate account with the Community Energy Service Company. Sorry, is this helping explain?
It is. So basically, there needs to be a communication to say I took this down to Monaco Village. There needs to be a communication to get people to join Urban Chain if they're interested in this, if they are outside of this scheme in terms of putting solar PV on their houses. Am I right?
Yes,
okay.
But we still haven't finalised what that looks like in terms of as it will it be direct with Urban Chain, or will, for the pilot, we have our own not-for-profit umbrella over the top of it? So
right. I work with a charity that looks at people with energy poverty. So I was thinking of it from that perspective in terms of how you could help the broader community if they weren't. Obviously, the pay-as-you-go and various schemes help in that regard. But by the sounds of it, I'm a little ahead of the curve.
Well, we work very closely with Citizens Advice in Essex, and they are helping to design what we're doing. And also, they've connected us with a lot of their clients in fuel poverty. So we're talking with them about how will this work for you, what works for you, those kind of questions.
Brilliant. I'll keep an eye out. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
And Gordon, we're back to you.
Yeah, this continued discussion about the details of it comes back to Energy Local. Alex, have you already been to them, or you've not mentioned them as far as I can remember?
We haven't spoken to them for about 14 years. Not because we haven't wanted to. It's just there's only a certain number of hours in the day, and most of their activity was up in Wales at that point. So, yeah, no, I think they do. To my knowledge, they do a fundamentally very similar thing, but it was mainly focused around hydro plants when we were watching them, which were kind of limited in scope, geographical scope.
Very much into PV as well now, but they've been struggling with the suppliers, which is why I'm very interested in that point with the one you've mentioned, Urban Chain, because they were supported by Octopus, but they've paused. In Octopus wording, they've paused doing this and enabling this. So now they've had to go to another one, which is costing more money. So that affects the whole promise to the households of saving money, and that's where they are at the moment. Anyway,
that's really interesting. We should probably talk to them because we're all trying to do the same thing at some point. So if you have contacts there, I'd welcome a introduction.
Yeah, I would recommend it, because the larger scale we can do this at across the UK, then it's more likely people like Octopus and the larger companies will remain interested.
Yeah, a lot of what we're doing is trying to put the enabling building blocks into place, and other people will pick those up and run with them and mutate them as they see fit. So
Mr. please.
Sorry, just a quick one. How many groups are there, Gordon and Alex, doing a similar thing? It's rather, I find it slightly depressing to hear that there's lots of parallel activity going on, because the whole point of the Great Collaboration is to try to, not have these parallel activities which are fundamentally wasteful. So are there lots of initiatives doing basically the same thing?
sorry,
you
Gordon.
say, Alex, go on.
Well, I think what our innovation is partly technological, partly service design and business model. So are there people trying to do the same thing as us? Yes. Are they doing it in the same way as us? No.
And how many are there, do you think?
Well, Gordon, so there's Energy Local.
Yeah, we do communicate, we do cross communicate via Community Energy England. So there are links there so that we can definitely avoid unnecessary duplication. But there's also it's a matter of innovation, and what Alex is doing is to a certain extent innovative. And I mentioned Big Solar Co-op. We're focused in a different area on large scale, very large roofs, 50 kilowatt and above. But I'm sure there are parallel areas, and we constantly need to update and keep each other in contact. Is why I'm here today.
Because it does seem blindingly obvious that if you can have a community energy scheme that allows anybody to join and covers the difficulty of individuals being able to afford the panels in the first place, it seems so blindingly obvious that that's a good thing to do, that the government would enable it and everybody would be doing it. So it's it's slightly depressing that we're at this stage of, in the middle of a climate crisis, and we're not converting the homes to solar energy, and this method seems to be an obvious solution.
Blindingly obvious in the present government for the past 14 years has not been two things I'd say in the same sentence.
It's a question of incentives as well, Tristram, we're not incentivized to collaborate. We have, with Essex and several other county councils, we've gone to the government and to Innovate UK and said, at the system level, it makes sense to innovate and across the whole system rather than compete in a market-based method. And they're no, we let 1,000 flowers bloom and let the market deliver. So we are hamstrung by the approach with how innovation funding is deployed in this country.
I mean, I suppose there's a good point about a bit of competition and a few, and it's not so bad if it's area based. So if you're the only people doing this in Essex and Gordon's doing it in wherever he's doing it, you know, and it's that, I suppose that makes sense, and you can see which works best. But so long, I'm just concerned that at Winchfield, you know, to take our local activity, we're using you and looking at your scheme, but the question is, could we or should we be doing our own sort of competition to say who's going to give us the best service?
To my knowledge, we are distinctly different.
Okay.
But that might not be the case. I think we're certainly different in we're absolutely different in our financial innovation. But I imagine in some of the smart local energy system technical innovation, there will be other people looking to do the same thing, but most of those people will be for profit. So
Okay.
they will have a very different business model and a different end goal.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Wendy, please. You need to unmute, Wendy. Even more, you need to unmute.
Wendy, you need to unmute.
Sorry, I thought I pressed it. I did press it, but obviously it didn't actually press. I'm just interested in the fact that we've got all these great plans and systems and stuff that we're aiming for, but your comment was that we don't necessarily have enough installers. So I'd like to be able to lobby my new incoming MP to see what can be done about that. So it's going to hold everything back if we don't have enough installers. So is that something that you are able to sort of advise on and give you know, is it an electrician that can take on a course and become a solar panel installer, or what's required?
Yes, but they need to be able to work at height. But there aren't enough electricians or electrical engineers. So this is, I remember being at a meeting about 17 years ago where some learned professor laid out all of this out, what needed to happen, when it needed, and he was just roundly ignored by the government representatives and the electricity companies. So this is a known problem that we have not addressed.
We've got a local college, and I'm just thinking, I mean, they offer bricklaying and all sorts of, so whether it's worth every education institute that can offer this sort of stuff or training set up, whether we can sort of try and highlight that and get people on these courses.
My guess is, given the limited thing I've seen of what the Labour Party is saying, is that their intention is to do just that. But execution and intention, two different things.
Okay, thanks.
I think the easiest thing to do would make it part of building regs. So the solar panels go on every new suitable house.
We had that, and then it got I think
I know.
2016 they
Cut the green crap. Yeah.
All right, Bonnie, back to you, please.
Just to say, I'm a trustee of Pace Manningtree, so we're one of the kind of Essex-based organisations that's trying to roll this out. And one of the things we've come across is that even though, when, you know, on the face of it, on paper, this scheme makes sense, there's such a lot of education needed for people to understand that it really is what it looks like. There really isn't a kind of, you know, the kind of what's the catch question is such a big thing in people's minds. It's very difficult for people to believe that this is actually going to be a good idea. And we've held a number of kind of meetings locally with people, allowing people to come and ask questions and kind of trying to get community buy-in. And that's been one of the biggest hurdles for us, is just getting people to understand what's needed. And it seems like there's a kind of a bandwidth issue for people, say in my position with young children at school, full-time jobs, single or otherwise, parent families, just too busy to actually engage with what needs to happen to change the hardware of their house. It just feels like a big deal to people. And I think that's one of the things we've come across quite a lot, is just the circumstances under which somebody might change their energy provider is they're so personal and such a big thing for people. It feels uphill. And I think until it can feel anything other than uphill, we're going to keep having this issue of not actually just being able to practically get around to doing it as quickly as it needs doing. And I think that the piece about education very much needs to go along with the structural changes, as it were, to the system. I don't know if you've kind of seen that elsewhere, Alex, if we've seen it in other places apart from ours.
I completely agree. I was talking with Tom Mote about this on Monday. It's really hard, and part of the challenge is our bit of the industry making things really simple. 1 click, 10-minute decision. I don't need money. This is how much I'm going to save. Click here to talk to somebody who's endorsed by my local district council to do this. That will help, but we're still some way from being that clear and simple. And the other thing, of course, is people put solar on their houses and other people see it and they go, oh, that's fairly straightforward. But for example, where I live, no one's got solar on their houses, not a single person, including me. I mean, my roof is chaos, but and so there's no one to talk to who's got it, who go, oh, that's really straightforward, and so on.
Yeah, there's definitely a domino effect. And I think, one of the things we've seen is that because as a local group, PACE has got a strong reputation, it took us using our reputation, as it were, to influence the local area for us to gain traction, to get people to agree to take part in this, when actually it's in their interest. It's just a hard thing for people to get their heads around. But I think, Tristram, in response to your, was it you? Somebody was saying, does it make sense to have all these people doing this in parallel? I think the education bit for people locally is one of the most significant hurdles that we're dealing with. So in that sense, yes, absolutely, we need local groups where there's already been trust built up to engage the community on why you would bother, how easy it really is, or otherwise. And there is very much a sense of there's a domino effect. So for example, I'm in a sort of a development where all the houses are very similar. The roofs will be at the same angles as one another. So if you can assess me and say my house makes sense to have solar, then the whole of my street will be like, oh, okay. And they will look at it and think maybe that's possible for me because the houses are similar. Whereas in an area where they're all very different, we've had quite a lot of pushback from people saying, well, I'm in a grade this or that building and I wouldn't be able to do it without having actually looked at the assessments. So I think all of that stuff just adds up to be, it feels like a big hurdle when actually each person, like you say, if they could have a 10-minute kind of thought process that goes, it makes sense, it won't cost me money, it might save me money. What we've found is the saving money is the bit that will leverage people to change.
Great.
Tristram, please.
On that question of getting people confident, Alex, is there a minimum number of sort of early adopters? Because I imagine if it starts to work with a very few houses, people would join in. They would see the results. And also, would it be possible for you to adopt somebody who's already got solar on their roofs and bring them into the community scheme so that the whole community is it part of a parish level or a multi-parish level scheme?
If you've already got solar, we can incorporate you into what we're doing as long as you have a smart meter and your battery has a specification that will interact with our smart local energy system.
And what about the minimum number of people? If you had, you know, in Winchfield, if we had 10 early adopters, say we'll start. Can you do it even for such a small number?
Yes.
So I think, Bonnie, that would seem to be, you know, as it starts to work, people will get confidence. They'll know it's not a cheat.
Alex, the CESC, I think, were the initials you use to describe your business. Can anybody set up a company that way so that we can multiply the number of installations going around of your organization?
So we've set up Essex Community Energy CIC, which is Community Interest Company, to be the umbrella in Essex.
Right.
And it will also probably do the parishes in Kent and West Sussex and elsewhere temporarily. We're talking with West Sussex about setting up a similar one with the county council there. We've got a dormant one in Suffolk that we can activate if we need to. And I think the goal is to get it so you've got a legal wrapper, a business plan, a governance structure that can be cut and paste anywhere. We think the county scale makes sense. We've offered parishes to help set up their own parish scale organizations like this, and most of them said no, too much, too complicated, we don't understand smart local energy systems, or at least not yet.
As you say, it all comes back to education. Does anyone else have any other points they would like to discuss with Alex, please? I'm seeing nothing, so I'll go on with my usual blurb. I would normally be ready and able to say, do come back next week when our topic is going to be such and such. But the person giving our discussion next week has just realized he's going to be at Glastonbury and is not quite sure that his Wi-Fi will be up to talking to us. So I'm at the moment without anybody for next week. I will find someone, but I can't tell you who it is just yet. But thank you all very much for showing up, and thank you for your comments and links in the chat. Everything gets put on to the Great Collaboration Wiki from where people will be able to go back and pick up notes on the chat or the links that are there and everything else. So it all becomes readily available to you in the next day or so when I find a spare hour or two. In the meantime, Alex, I really think that was a great discussion. Thank you very much indeed, and we were delighted to have you.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
And everybody take care, and thank you all very much.
Thank
See you
you.
next week, I hope.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.